Yesterday, we released an absolute feature film on the wide receiver position, about a 2-hour-long video. Hopefully, you guys have checked that out. Today, we're going to be tackling the quarterback position, the top 6 fantasy football quarterbacks that matter for Dynasty fantasy football drafts. And then the second half of this video, we will talk about the tight end position, the top 5 tight ends, basically Brock Bowers and everybody else. But those everybody else guys need to be talked about nonetheless. Should be a fun video. We're going to go through everything from their profiles to what they do on film, how we graded them, their pro comparisons, all that good stuff will be tackled in today's video. I know a lot of people are just getting back to the Dynasty scene ahead of the NFL draft about 2 days from now. So we're not going to assume you've heard these arguments before, and we're going to go really in depth on these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the quarterback position is the most valuable position in the NFL. And like everybody always says, tight end is right after it. All jokes aside, though, if you're a Bears fan, if you're a Vikings fan, you want to hear the spiel on these quarterbacks, we got you covered today.
Yeah, and of course, in Superflex and tight end premium leagues, we care about this from a fantasy football perspective as well. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. All right, so in the wide receiver video, we kind of broke down, who's your 20 to 16 and stuff. Like the quarterbacks, we know what 6 quarterbacks are going to be our top 6 in whatever order we have them. Of course, you'll see how we have them ranked on the screen right now. But quarterback 1 is Caleb Williams. He is expected, not only expected, basically guaranteed to be the first overall pick to the Chicago Bears. But like I said, we're going to break down his game for those of you guys that are just coming back to the scene. What Caleb Williams does extremely well that everybody wants to talk about is the arm talent, the playmaking, the out of structure play that reminds people of Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, some of these guys. But what he also does extremely well is he's highly accurate. He's very mobile. He's great at handling pressure, particularly in 2022. He had, some concerns this year with, character question marks that people want to overblow. He played a little bit of hero ball in 2023 because the USC Trojans defense was so terrible. The offensive scheme was terrible. The pass catchers weren't getting separation. But generally speaking, this is a guy that can play inside a structure. You want him to drop back, go through his progressions and throw it to where he needs to throw it. He can do it. Or when the play breaks down, he can scramble, tuck it and run for, 300-400 yards a season in the NFL, 5 to 10 rushing touchdowns, or he can scramble outside the pocket and make plays downfield with his arm, which is what makes him so special and what is drawing those Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, even Aaron Rodgers, I've heard, type of comparisons.
For sure. And when you're talking about some of the metrics, obviously this guy won the Heisman in 2022. He is number 1 in this class in catchable pass percentage, 6.2 career big time throw percentage, which ranks 2nd in this class, 0.24 EPA per play, which is 1st in this class, 79.4 grade against pressure, 2nd, and a 91.8 PFF grade, which ranks 2nd in this class. So the numbers always add up, of course. And then when you actually break down the film of Caleb Williams, like you said, he is a magician when it comes to being behind center, man. We're talking about one of the best quarterback prospects of my time watching football, to be frank, man, to be honest. Like, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got Caleb Williams, you got Andrew Luck. I really do feel like those are 3 and of course Joe Burrow. I really do think those are 4 of the best quarterbacks that I have seen come out, and he's a worthwhile first round pick. You want the TLDR of all of this, man? If you have the first overall pick, if you are a Chicago Bears fan, enjoy Caleb Williams, because he will be a franchise signal caller for the next 10, 15, possibly 18 years in the NFL. But when we're talking about Caleb Williams, like you said, people are going to focus on the out of structure stuff. But I really do feel like he's far more progressed as an in the pocket type of passer, in structure type of passer, than people really give him credit for, man. We were doing a film breakdown over on Flock Fantasy yesterday, and we were talking about just how good he is at maneuvering the pocket in structure. Not even just, getting out of the pocket, going on the run, making a play down the field, but more so just, going left, going right, managing in the pocket, kind of like what we saw from, Tom Brady when he was in his prime, where Tom Brady, man, was never the most mobile guy, but he managed the pocket so well and kept his composure down the field. And there are flashes, despite Caleb Williams being, a great athlete, him being able to manage the pocket within structure and keep his eyes down the field. And that's what you want to see from a quarterback that isn't even 23 years old yet.
Yeah, and from a Dynasty rookie Superflex draft standpoint, if you guys have the 101 and you're in need of a quarterback, just thank your lucky stars you tanked in 2024. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to sell this pick for a Godfather offer. I'm going to get 4 first-round picks for it. But there's very few people in your league that have the draft capital, the pick
assets.
bank to be able to actually give you what you want for this player. And at the same time, this is the reason you tanked. You got him. You got Caleb Williams. Just take the player that you need for your team. Again, if you don't need a quarterback, maybe you want to trade down for Marvin Harrison. Maybe you want to sell the pick straight up for one of the top 3 wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, somebody like that. We'll talk about an entire, dynasty strategy video based on which pick you have after the NFL draft. And we already did break that down actually about a month and a half ago. So if you want to check that out, you can. But for the most part, Caleb Williams is the crown jewel of this class. He has been for years now. And I'm glad you brought up all of the metrics he ranked in, because those were all career numbers, right? He's over his career, including his time at Oklahoma and including this year when he wasn't playing at such a high level, he was still extremely productive on an EPA per play basis, led the class. Pressure is something that has been so indicative of these quarterbacks hitting and missing. We want to talk about nobody knows how to evaluate quarterbacks, the NFL, fantasy players, NFL media, like nobody can evaluate these quarterbacks correctly. One of the things that I have found to be the stickiest is these quarterbacks in college, their ability to handle pressure. Your Joe Burrows of the world, your Justin Herberts of the world, the guys that ended up becoming great quarterbacks at the NFL level, even Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, who were more so project quarterbacks coming out. They were able to handle pressure in college. Their PFF passing grade under pressure was good. And like you said, 79.4 for Caleb Williams back in 2022. That was second among all quarterbacks in this class, only to Bo Nix. And it also was up there with the top 15 dynasty quarterbacks on the market right now. I believe only Joe Burrow and Tua Tagovailoa in their best seasons had better passing marks under pressure. So handling pressure is one of these things that we see with the Zach Wilson coming out of college. He didn't face a lot of it in college. The second he gets to the NFL, he crumbles. I do not think that Caleb Williams will have that problem. And thankfully, he has a pretty decent offensive line, run game, and wide receiver core to throw to there in Chicago.
Yeah, unlike what he dealt with Cliff Kingsbury over there at USC. But all jokes aside, though, Caleb Williams, I mean, the majority of you are going to know who he is. We just wanted to give, of course, the overall rundown for those of you getting back into the scene. You guys know Caleb Williams now. We can go on to quarterback too. And this is a hotly debated topic across the industry. You'll have some people having, Jayden Daniels here. You have some people having maybe even JJ McCarthy or maybe even Michael Penix here. But for us, Drake Maye is the unquestioned quarterback too. And I'm going to leave this on the line right now. If you guys are unfamiliar with how good Drake Maye is, I view him closer to Caleb Williams than I view quarterback 3 to Drake Maye in this class.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think when you look at the prototypical size, 6'5", 220 pounds, just 21 years old still, led this class with an 8% big time throw rate, the only guy ahead of Caleb Williams. He was tasked with pushing the ball downfield. He was the type of guy that wanted to get the chunk plays, wanted to push the ball downfield. A 90.8 PFF passing grade in 2022 ranks 3rd among the best season marks in this class. He ran for 1,500 rushing yards since 2022. So we're talking about a guy that can do it with his legs, that can do it with his arm. He has the mobility and the playmaking aspect that we want from our top quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. These are the types of guys that Drake Maye reminds us of. He's a total gunslinger. He has weaknesses to his game. I respect some of these like quarterback gurus that are breaking down Drake Maye and saying, the internal clock under pressure needs to improve. Yep. The footwork issues need to improve. The ball placement at times, due to his flawed mechanics at times, needs to improve. And he makes young quarterback mistakes at times. But when I look at him, I see a guy that is extremely young. He's one of the youngest quarterbacks in this class. Second youngest quarterback we're going to talk about. And he had a prolific sophomore year, and all of his weapons, all of his protection, all of his run game disappeared in 2023, and he regressed a little bit. So with Drake Maye, when you look at what he actually brings to an NFL offense, if he's selected by the Vikings or the Patriots at 3rd overall, or even the Commanders at 2nd overall, you look at what he brings to the table that you can't coach: the size, the mobility, the arm talent, all that stuff that he has, the stuff that he doesn't have, the mechanical, pristine footwork at this point in time, some of the ball placement issues, some of the internal clock factor, all of that I believe is coachable, which is why you need to, again, this is the difficult thing with quarterbacks. It's very hard for me to just say, you got to project this guy forward, because we've gotten in trouble doing that in years past. But when you stack up the entire body of work, you watch the film, because that's what we did on our film breakdown with the top 3 quarterbacks yesterday, which, like you mentioned, is live on the site right now, flockfantasy.com/FSE. Drake Maye makes the difficult things look easy, and he does have these small mistakes, but they are 100% correctable in our opinion. So for me, in Dynasty Rookie Superflex drafts, depending on where he goes, this is a guy I'd be happy to select at 103, 104, or 105, depending on your view of Jayden Daniels, depending on your view of Malik Neighbors, and ultimately where Drake Maye gets drafted.
He's a guy I view as a top 20 overall startup pick, a legitimate second round type of startup pick. And although people, like you said, are going to point to his footwork, are going to point to the young quarterback mistakes he makes, guess what, man? That's why NFL evaluators are paid. That's why NFL coaches are paid. I would rather take the young 6'5", 220-pound, mobile, big-armed quarterback than I would the fourth-year starter that had better efficiency in college. Like when you watch Drake Maye, everything from a size, a mobility, an arm talent. And to be honest, man, people are going to point to, oh, well, he must not be up there fully mentally. It's like, no, like he's also one of the more cerebral quarterbacks in this class, being able to go through his reads, being able to get to his right spots, being able to dictate coverage with his eyes, man. Like you see all of those signs at this age. And there's a reason why this guy's getting comped in some circles to Trevor Lawrence, to Justin Herbert. Like I see that upside in spades. And to be honest, I think he has more rushing upside at the next level than both those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than Jayden Daniels in this class, really, he has the most rushing upside of any quarterback that we have here. He posted an FBS high over 95 PFF passing grade throwing over the middle of the last 2 seasons. Do you think that if he was a young quarterback that didn't know what the hell he was doing, that wasn't able to layer throws, that wasn't able to manipulate defenders with his eyes, like you said, that wasn't able to drive the ball when he needed to drive the ball, put some air under it when he needed to put some air under it, do you think he would lead this class in throws over the middle of the field, 10 plus yards downfield? No, absolutely not. He's a gunslinger. He makes mistakes. That's understandable. When he has a better supporting cast around him, when he has better protection around him, a run game around him at the next level, which he might not have if he goes to the New England Patriots, but at least he'll have better coaching at that point in time. He is going to correct these issues. I feel very confident that Drake Maye is one of the most overlooked, one of the most over-scrutinized recent quarterback prospects I can remember.
Yeah, and I'm not throwing this comp there, but if people are so focused on his footwork and the young quarterback mistakes he makes, the fact that he has, maybe some spotty ball location at times, all those little factors. Did you watch Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech? And I'm not throwing the Patrick Mahomes comp on Drake Maye. That's just to prove that young quarterbacks with elite traits aren't going to be finished products in their, 22nd year on this earth.
Yeah, and I think Jordan Love is one that's also been thrown out as a comp for Drake Maye as well. I think that's a decent one, but I actually think Jordan Love was significantly more raw coming out and was a worse decision maker too. He was a horrible, like Jameis Winston caliber decision maker in college. And Drake Maye has the odd lapse in decision making, but he's not nearly as bad of a prospect from that perspective as Jordan Love was. So again, get these guys in the right environment, coach them up. Obviously, we all want this guy to go to the Minnesota Vikings where he has Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, all these guys to throw to. His college or his high school quarterback coach, Josh McCown, is the QB coach there in Minnesota. So with Drake Maye, again, let's get this guy to Minnesota and not New England. But even if he goes to the Patriots or even if he goes to the Commanders or the Broncos or whatever team would trade up for him, maybe the Giants potentially as well, I still believe in this guy as the 103, the 104, the 105 at the absolute latest in Dynasty Superflex rookie draft. So let's move on to our consensus quarterback 3 in this class is Jayden Daniels. And again, if you don't watch college football, I'm just going to pretend like you guys have no absolute knowledge of this prospect right now. Jayden Daniels is an electric runner. He is a playmaker with his legs. I would call him a run-first quarterback. And that might struggle to hit home with like old school boomer football fans, but what it does, open up the possibility for is an electric fantasy football quarterback, which is why as fantasy players, we are enamored with Jayden Daniels at this point in time, because I think he's relatively a good decision maker and has a good deep ball as a passer, but that's kind of where it starts and ends with him. I don't think he manages the pocket particularly well. I don't think he has a particularly live arm either. I think his arm is pretty average. I think he throws a nice deep ball and he's a good decision maker. That's pretty much what he brings to the table as a passer. Everything else, the super high ceiling that some people think he has, is related to his ability to run the football, because even outside the pocket when he's scrambling, he looks to run and not to throw. Caleb Williams and Drake Maye look to throw more often than they look to run, even though they're good athletes as well. So for me, with Jayden Daniels, some of the issues issues I had with him were the fact that he's a fifth-year player who has only been thought of as a first-round quarterback prospect, really the second half of his Heisman season as a fifth-year player at LSU. His eye discipline is lacking at times. I notice him staring down receivers very often. When it wasn't there, he just ran, which again could play in the NFL, but smart defensive coordinators are going to put spies up. They're going to make sure their defensive ends aren't breaking contain, all that kind of stuff. The ball placement, the slender frame that he has to. He weighed in over, I think it was like 215 pounds or something like that. I think he played a little bit closer to 200, if I'm being honest. And then,
yeah,
like I mentioned too, with Jayden Daniels, it's like it took him 4.5 years really to become this first round quarterback prospect, when think about how much further along Caleb Williams and Drake Maye would be if they got 5 years of college football.
Yeah, and that's my biggest problem sometimes when people just comparing them on a linear plane. It's like, well, no, like of course the soon to be 24-year-old quarterback looks like a better college quarterback than the 21 and the 22-year-old. There's a reason why he won the Heisman. He's a very, very good college quarterback. And when you watch Jayden Daniels play, like compared to other college talent, he is dominant. Like you said, the problem that I have with Jayden Daniels is what he does at the collegiate level. How does it translate to the next level? Is he going to be the next Lamar Jackson, or more likely, is he going to be like a worse Kyler Murray, or is he going to be possibly Justin Fields if he doesn't keep developing as a passer? Like there is a wide range of outcomes for where we could possibly evaluate Jayden Daniels in his NFL career. But what I will say is my biggest question mark to this day is if you can't consistently win from the pocket. When I say win from the pocket, I don't mean like he's got a pretty deep ball. He can throw the football down the field. Like I'm not questioning that ability, but more so getting through your reads, getting to your second, your third read, your fourth read, being able to scan a defense. And on top of all that, man, I need to see this guy throw across the middle of the field. And there's just so much evidence of crossers coming open, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, in breaking routes that from a timing perspective is the right read. He needs to go to that player and he's tucking and running. And it's like, yeah, cool. He's getting a 50, 60-yard run and downing it inside the opponent's 5-yard line. But at the next level, turning down 20, 25 plus yards after the catch from a guy like Malik Neighbors is just not sustainable production. So I just want to see him trust his playmakers even more. And like he did a good job trusting his playmakers when his, slot fades or deep balls down the field, but more so getting through your progressions. When you know Malik Neighbors, who's, in my opinion, the best in-breaking route runner in this entire class, wide open multiple times a game, you don't need to tuck it and run. And again, can you tuck it and run in the NFL defense is going to be my question mark.
Yeah, exactly. I think everything that he did on film is spectacular when you just watch a highlight tape. But when you break down, let's look at a previous LSU quarterback who was a 5-year starter who got a lot better his final year in Joe Burrow. The difference between Joe Burrow and Jayden Daniels tape to me is that Joe Burrow made Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Terrace Marshall, all of his weapons' lives much easier by throwing them open, throwing with anticipation, throwing it into hole shots against zone coverage, all that kind of stuff. Whereas Jayden Daniels waited for Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors to uncover and then unleashed a very nice deep ball or threw it with, good touch or whatever. It more so was reactionary quarterback play rather than anticipatory quarterback play. So again, could it play in the NFL where all he needs to do early on in his career is first and second read aren't there, half field reads aren't open, run? Like that could work. That could definitely work from a fantasy perspective, especially because we're going to get a lot of fantasy points from this guy. But the thing that I worry about and why I can't really take him any higher than 105 in a Dynasty Superflex rookie draft, because I do believe the top two receivers, Harrison and Neighbors, as well as the top two quarterbacks, Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, are better prospects than Jayden Daniels, even though Jayden Daniels probably has a higher ceiling than all of them, because if he becomes a franchise quarterback, a Lamar Jackson type, Kyler Murray type even, he has the rushing upside to potentially break fantasy football in the long term and could end up being a top 3 to 5 starter pick as soon as his second season.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll quickly add on him before we move on to JJ McCarthy is with Jayden Daniels, I'm not arguing that as soon as he starts in the NFL, he will be a productive fantasy quarterback, because he absolutely will be, man. Like you don't get 4.3 speed at the quarterback too often. The issue with investing to him in Dynasty, in my opinion, is there's still the range of outcome where he is Justin Fields. And I feel much more confident with Drake Maye, much more confident with Caleb Williams, much more confident with those first two receivers, to the point where, again, if he's there at 105, I will take him, like you said. But at the same time, I cannot take him over elite prospects for my for my grading.
Yeah, and if you're in a 2x tight end premium, you could maybe make the argument for Bowers because that would hold a lot of value. But I mean, again, Jayden Daniels, he's a quarterback. He's going to run the ball. He'll probably maintain his value a la Trey Lance after his rookie season, or Anthony Richardson right now, or Justin Fields last offseason. But again, remember that all three of the guys that I just mentioned, really, like, they've fallen off because they couldn't play quarterback at a high level. Anthony Richardson remains to be seen, obviously, but it's something that we have to question and something we have to debate. Can he actually do this at a high level? Because he can be a great fantasy football quarterback as long as he's a starter. But if he only gets 2 or 3 years before his team moves on from him, that's all we're really going to factor in 2 to 3 years from now with Jayden Daniels. So JJ McCarthy, like you said, is our consensus QB 4.5, I guess, because I technically have Bo Nix rated higher than JJ McCarthy. But again, this is pre-draft evaluation based on ability. I realize that JJ McCarthy is much more of a lock for the first round than Bo Nix is. So I'm probably going to have JJ McCarthy QB4 post NFL draft. And he's a divisive prospect, man. You either love JJ McCarthy or you absolutely cannot stand JJ McCarthy, because when you look at his body of work, he was a game manager, point blank period. He was a game manager for a national championship winning Michigan Wolverines team that had Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards and a great defense, and they were able to run the ball notoriously against Penn State. I don't think he threw a pass in the second half. But when you actually look at the film
So much more
and you look at what JJ McCarthy does well, and you look at the third down reel when he had to make a play on 3rd and 7+, or when you look at what happened when the play breaks down and the pocket collapses, he displays excellent arm talent. He throws with pretty solid anticipation for the youngest quarterback in this class, just 21.3 years old, 6'3", 219 pounds, maybe a little bit aggressive on the size perspective. I think he played closer to 200. But he has solid tools. He's got a good arm. He's a good athlete. He ran a very good, like, 3-cone drill and all this kind of stuff. So you look at this guy, and the way I kind of look at this, and this is not an insult to JJ McCarthy, I view him as big school Zach Wilson with better intangibles.
Like Purdy and Tan. Yeah, I mean, like, that was the initial thing you brought up, is like, it's kind of like if you took Zach Wilson and you took Brock Purdy and you just had a car collision between them, because he's got, like, the big school pedigree, the record, Jim Harbaugh sings his praises, like, everything from an intangible standpoint, from a mental standpoint, seems to be there with JJ McCarthy being able to handle pressure. I mean, prime example, game against Alabama, college football playoff semifinal, you're down 7, 2 minutes left in the game. You go out there and you get that tying touchdown to take it to overtime, and then you end up winning in overtime. And guess what, man? A lot of quarterbacks on that stage would falter under pressure and lose to Alabama, man. Like, Alabama is a storied college football program for a reason. They've had so much success. You're playing against Nick Saban. So the pressure of that moment really told me all I needed to know from a mental standpoint for how JJ McCarthy would be able to handle the NFL pressure once he gets drafted. And when you're talking about JJ McCarthy, he is the context quarterback of this entire class. Like, people will point to his stats and say, he only throwed, 332 times this year. He only threw 22 touchdowns. He's a game manager. That's all he does. Michigan just loves running the ball. But when you watch him play, like, when they needed to have it, like you mentioned, 3rd and 6+, 3rd and 8+, Michigan needed that convert. The ball was in JJ McCarthy's hands. And I want to also fight back. Like, I get it. People will look at the Penn State game and think, 7 for 8, 60 yards. Like, they don't trust him to make the throws. A, he was injured in that game. And B, the Michigan offensive line could not do anything in their power to block Chop Robinson and Adika Isaac up front. It was actually remarkable how quickly they were getting pressure. So Michigan just said, you know what? They can't stop us running the football, and our tackles can't handle an island with those top edge rushers. Guess what? We are going to run the football. And that is what smart football programs do. There's a reason why Michigan won undefeated. There's a reason why Michigan won the national championship. Like, they will do what they will to win football games. And I honestly think that also speaks character on JJ McCarthy, man. 5-star recruit. How many guys would be willing to take a backseat role on a national championship team rather than try to be the star to cement their draft capital? Because, to be honest, man, like, I think just the nature of his role on Michigan shows how selfless he is as a player.
Yeah, he is the guy that everybody's going to point to when we say, like, this is the difference between scouting and just saying how good a player is. You know what I mean? Because everything I said, like, I believe Zach Wilson had slightly better tools than him, but Zach Wilson clearly didn't have what it takes above the shoulders to lead a franchise, to work hard enough. I mean, I don't think he had bad work ethic, but I think when you look at JJ McCarthy, like, having that unselfish nature, just hand the ball off 40 times that game and just do whatever it takes to win. I don't think Zach Wilson would have been willing to do that, like you said. So he is so polarizing. I get it. He's going to be the type of guy that goes in the first round of the NFL draft, probably somewhere between pick 11 and 5, depending on if the Vikings just get him at their pick or if they have to trade up for him or whatever the case is. But either way you slice it with JJ McCarthy, he's got an intriguing fantasy ceiling because he'll be a first-round quarterback. He can run a little bit. I mean, Zach Wilson, I mentioned, is my comparison for him. You wrote down Ryan Tannehill. I've heard people say Brock Purdy as well. I've heard other people talk about different quarterbacks. You're talking about a guy that if he goes to a good landing spot, like the Minnesota Vikings, would have weapons to throw to in that situation. So with JJ McCarthy, I'm comfortable spending the 107 or the 108 on him, depending on your opinion of, Brock Bowers and Romo Dunze. And if you need a tight end or if you need a wide receiver, if you need a quarterback, he's the type of guy that I think makes rookie drafts more valuable. And whether you love him or hate him, first round quarterbacks are always good in rookie drafts. So I do really appreciate that JJ McCarthy is getting first round hype as a person who has tons of 2024 first round capital.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we pretty much read it off for JJ McCarthy. These are the main top 4 first-round caliber quarterbacks based off what we're hearing from the media, though a 5th guy, a 6th guy that we'll get into in a second have gotten some, outside the media type of first-round buzz, but we'll probably hear their name called at the beginning of round 2. We'll start off with our consensus quarterback 5, and like you said, he is your quarterback 4. I'll let you start it off with Bo Nix, because obviously you have him higher than JJ. I have JJ higher than him. What makes Bo Nix such an intriguing prospect coming into the season or coming into this draft?
Yeah, I think he has some high-level traits that people don't want to talk about, and that's where I get to quarterback 4 over quarterback 5, because I think most people would argue that JJ McCarthy's ceiling is higher because he's 3 years younger than Bo Nix. He has so much meat left on the bone in terms of what he can learn. But when I look at Bo Nix, I keep talking about this, and I sound like a broken record at this point. It's like he got to play in a developmental league the way that the NBA and the NHL have these developmental leagues before you get on to the pros, because Bo Nix's improvement from his freshman season at Auburn to his redshirt senior 6th-year season at Oregon is night and day difference. His biggest weakness at Auburn was inaccuracy. He set the FBS completion percentage record at Oregon. That is a stark difference in terms of strengths and weaknesses from a player. And I think it speaks to his ability to get better as a player and to work hard and to improve on his mistakes. Again, everybody's going to point to the scheme that he played in. Oregon's an easy, dump it off, screen passes, wide open space type of offense, but he operated that thing like a true pro. He was a top 3 quarterback in this class when he was tasked with throwing 10 plus yards downfield, even though he did throw a lot of these bubble screens and a lot of these types of checkdowns. The scheme was very good, but Bo Nix operated it to a T. He had literally one of the best college football seasons you can really see from a college quarterback. 75.58% on target throw percentage, 91.2 PFF pressure grade. So if that doesn't sound crazy good to you, I just want to outline 91.2 PFF passing grade under pressure is a ridiculous number. That is 10 points higher than the best season of any top 15 dynasty quarterback ever posted in college. Joe Burrow's 2019 campaign being the bar there. So he was 10 points better than Joe Burrow's 2019 campaign against pressure. He has issues. He's older, got some footwork issues here and there. His tools are probably not elite. He's got a solid arm, but not an elite arm. He's good mobile athlete, but he's not Jayden Daniels. He's got a lot of schemed throws and that kind of thing. But honestly, man, when I think of a true field general type of quarterback who could go in the late first round, early second round, I think a team like the Raiders, the Patriots, maybe the the Rams, the Seahawks, they should be all over Bo Nix.
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos, hypothetically, let's just say at 12, a team wants to make a massive trade up. Broncos trade down, pick in the 20s. I can see them going Bo Nix in that instance. They did, funny enough, we talked about Zach Wilson as being kind of your JJ comp. They obviously just traded for Zach Wilson. I don't think they're set at quarterback. I think they're still looking at this class. And I've said all offseason cycle that Bo Nix would fit Sean Payton's offense like a glove. And the reason why is there's a reason why he's 91.2 pressure grade, because when you watch the film on Bo Nix, what he does so well is identifying pressure, knowing his hot reads, and getting into his right check. The pre-snap cerebral ability of Bo Nix is something that I'm not hearing talked about enough, to be honest. I understand if you want to critique the Oregon system, scheme downfield shots, a lot of screen passes, not a high big-time throw rate for Bo Nix, but what he does so well at managing the game is simply not putting his offense in harm's way. When he sees pressure, being able to ID the hot read and get the ball out of his hands is really all you need to do as a starting quarterback realistically in handling pressure on the next level. We're not saying that Bo Nix is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but can he be a Kirk Cousins at his peak? Can he be a Baker Mayfield type? If you're getting that type of starting quarterback projection, probably at the 1-2 turn of your rookie drafts, assuming he goes either in the late first or the early second round, I'm going to be smashing the draft button every single time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put it past the Patriots if they do trade down with the Minnesota Vikings to go up and get Drake Maye or whatever, to be in on Bo Nix at the top of the second round. I wouldn't put it past Bo Nix to be like the first pick of the second round, the way that we saw out of Will Levis last year, where maybe the Raiders come up or the Rams come up or the Broncos come up or one of these teams. I do believe this guy's going to go in the top 40 picks of the NFL draft because honestly, like, I don't see a whole lot of flaws with his game outside of the fact that he's older and that he doesn't have the elite upside tools that we look for in some of these quarterbacks. But if he operates your offense and you have good playmakers, you have good pass catchers, like if, let's say, for example, he goes to the Las Vegas Raiders, you have Devontae Adams to throw to, you have Jacoby Myers to throw to, maybe they add a running back later on in the draft, you have Michael Mayer at tight end, you have a pretty decent scheme and offensive line to work with. Like, he can operate that offense to a Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins level. He's never going to be a top 5 to 8 quarterback in the NFL, but you can win games with a guy like Bo Nix, especially if he's on his rookie deal as a second round pick or something, and you're able to go out and spend big in free agency or whatever the case is. So Bo Nix is the type of guy that you draft in the second round and you maybe don't want to give a second contract to. But regardless, I do think he is a very slept on quarterback prospect as far as what he can do in the league.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about Bo Nix before we head on to our quarterback 6 is, like I mentioned with Jayden Daniels, Jayden Daniels is much closer to JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix for us than he is to Drake Maye. For reference, Drake Maye over a 90 grade for me, 90.25. Jayden Daniels an 84.0. For reference, JJ McCarthy 84.0. Bo Nix at an 81.5 for me. And for you, I believe it's 83 for Nix, 83 for Daniels, 82.5 for McCarthy.
Yeah, I have Nix and Daniels graded the same, but of course, fantasy implications of the rushing plus the fact that he's guaranteed to go super high in the draft is the difference there. But yeah, as far as like a raw talent standpoint, I really don't see a huge difference between these guys. They get there in different ways, obviously. Like Bo Nix, if Jayden Daniels could pass the ball and operate an offense like Bo Nix, he would probably be the first or second pick in the draft, in my opinion. Now, he's obviously going to probably be the second pick in the draft, but I would put him all the way up there ahead of potentially a guy like Drake Maye if he could operate an offense the way that Bo Nix can. So speaking of operating an offense, let's talk about Michael Penix Jr. because he's another one of these guys like Bo Nix that's getting maybe some first round buzz. I heard some reports that he could go as high as 8th overall. I've heard some reports that he might slide to day 2. I've heard some reports that he might even slide to day 3 because of the medical concerns, because Michael Penix had a really interesting college career. At Indiana, he has like 2 ACL tears, a shoulder injury. He like had every season where he ended up on IR basically the end of the year. So that's a concern for him. He wasn't able to stay on the field, but his 2 years at Washington, he operated that offense extremely well. He pushed the ball downfield like crazy. His arm is very solid. He doesn't have the out of structure playmaking ability that a Caleb Williams or a Drake Maye has. But when you need a guy to just stand in the pocket and push the ball downfield, he was able to get the ball to Rome Odunze, to Jalen McMillan, to Jalen Polk, all 3 of which ended up in our top 12 overall consensus wide receivers in this class. Michael Penix Jr., though, the thing that I keep coming back to with him is that he is an older quarterback, 24 years old, and I do believe he has a lot more warts to his game than Bo Nix does. I think with Michael Penix, the immobility, even though he ran fast at the combine, whatever, or at the pro day, I don't know if it's actually really that applicable because I never saw him do that in games. The ball placement and the accuracy issues are something that nobody really likes to bring up. They always say he's an accurate quarterback or whatever, but especially over the middle of the field, he wasn't very accurate. And the short areas of the field too, he didn't throw to his receivers, giving them ample opportunity to run after the catch. He was accurate in terms of his deep ball, relatively speaking, because he had such great receivers and he trusted those guys and he's kind of a gunslinger. But as far as his ability to handle pressure, deliver balls accurately, get through his progressions, we saw against Michigan, when that stuff kind of went awry, he wasn't really able to recover very well. But against Texas, he was able to recover very well. So he's a polarizing prospect himself, honestly. Like, I think he can be a good pocket quarterback that wins from the pocket, a la Geno Smith, maybe Jacoby.
Point and shoot type of guy.
Yeah, like he can operate an NFL offense and potentially be a stopgap starter for you. But I envision him being the type of quarterback that if you have him, you're looking to upgrade.
100%. And to be honest, that's why I don't think he's a first round pick. If your type of bridge quarterback is the one you get, round 2, round 3, round 4 of the draft, you're much more confident with that investment because A, obviously it's a less hit. B, obviously, like you said, when you're spending a round 1 pick, you're expecting that guy to be a top 5 to 10 quarterback, which I don't see Michael Penix being at the next level. Like I said, he's kind of a point and shoot type of quarterback where he's got a big arm. He can manage the pocket really well. That's another thing that I think he does at a very elite level is his pocket presence. Had the lowest pressure to sack ratio of this entire class. So when you're talking about Michael Penix Jr., when it's in the pocket, it's good. Like he's got the arm. He can manage it well. Like he's a smart player. He gets to his reads. The problem, like you said, is people think he's this elite accuracy quarterback. Like I've heard people say like, oh, from 20 feet away, he could throw a pin through a keyhole. And it's like, what Michael Penix are you watching? Because the one I'm watching is him spraying the balls all over the field and having 3 of the best receivers in the class being able to make up for it. Like that's not a discredit on Michael Penix. He's a solid quarterback, but we got to give some flowers to the fact that he's throwing to 3 of my top 13 receivers in the class and my 3rd overall receiver in the class. So with Michael Penix Jr., like he's a fine quarterback, like you said. Jacoby Brissett is my comp for him, but he's the type of guy where if you have Jacoby Brissett, you're looking to take Drake Maye at 3rd overall. You're looking to take Jayden Daniels at 3rd overall, like the New England Patriots are in this upcoming draft cycle.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well there. With Michael Penix, it's like I'm very confident he's better than Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder and some of these
100%.
guys that have gotten opportunities to start in the NFL. It's just that I do envision a scenario where he's solid enough to like get you by while he's on his rookie deal, but you don't want to pay this guy $50 million a year as soon as that's done. Like he's the type of guy that a team works through. Again, maybe Seattle takes him in the second round. Maybe the Rams take him in the second round. I hope not, but the Buccaneers are heavily connected to him because he's literally from Tampa Bay.
Raiders.
Maybe a team like that takes him in the second round and they work him into the starting lineup eventually, maybe after 1 year, half a season, whatever. Stafford and the Rams make a lot of sense because he's an aging quarterback. Maybe the Jets take a shot on him if he slides to round 3 or something like that. It's just difficult for me to get to Michael Penix being a first round quarterback. If he goes in the first round, obviously in dynasty rookie drafts, we'll have to take him, probably 112, 111 type of area if he gets first round draft capital. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's actually more likely he slides to round 3 than he goes in round 1.
I completely agree. And again, that's also with complications with his film, but also due to the medical history that he has coming from Indiana before going to Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that is the top 6 quarterbacks for us. We do have other names, Spencer Rattler, Michael Pratt, Joe Milton of Tennessee, Pratt from Tulane, and then Rattler, of course, of South Carolina. I think with Rattler, he's also the type of guy that could go on day 2, be a developmental guy for like the Giants or the Rams or a team like that.
He's like a worse Knicks.
Yeah, he's like a worse Knicks. Exactly. He definitely has the Knicks ability, except probably a little bit better tools. He's all over the place for me. It's like, I don't really trust Spencer Rattler to lead a franchise. Again, if Desmond Ridder got a starting opportunity, maybe Spencer Rattler will get a starting opportunity in the NFL. But to me, he profiles more as a high level backup who you maybe develop for 1 year and see what you have. But after 1 season of him maybe not starting, maybe teams realize he just doesn't have what it takes to be a starting quarterback at the NFL level. Michael Pratt is like Brock Purdy if he played for the worst offense
vanilla
in the
ice
NFL.
cream.
Like Brock Purdy, the best qualities of Brock Purdy are like kind of the best qualities of Michael Pratt as well, except to a way lower scale in my opinion. And then Joe Milton is just like I'm not even convinced he knows
he's
how
a
to play
tight end
quarterback. He just has no idea what he's doing. He just has freakish arm talent.
Yeah, I watched him play a year at Michigan. The guy's got a cannon of an arm and not much else, to be honest. But all jokes aside, though, with Michael Pratt, the best describable term for him is vanilla ice cream, where it's boring. He's solid college quarterback. Like, can he be like Cooper Rush? Sure, but like
Aiden O'Connell maybe is like that type of guy that you could think of for him.
Solid, like 4th or 5th round pick at quarterback. But if he's taken on day 2, then there's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you got Aiden O'Connell starting games, you're probably looking to upgrade your quarterback position. So let's transition into the tight end position. We'll probably spend a little bit less time on these guys because the class is not nearly as good as the quarterback class is. But the crown jewel of this class is Brock Bowers, a guy that everybody is very, very excited about. And if you're not excited about him, it just means that you're a tight end hater, in my opinion, because
or haven't watched him.
Yeah, you probably haven't watched him as well. Plugging in the tape on Brock Bowers is so fun, man. He is one of the funnest players to watch in this entire class because he's 6'3", he's 243 pounds. Some people might say undersized. I say ideal size for a pass catching tight end. Movement ability is Dalton Kincaid plus. Like what we saw from Dalton Kincaid at Utah, Brock Bowers is even better. He's Sam Laporta better. Hands are outstanding. Physicality, outstanding. Yards after catch, outstanding. His profile is the best we've ever seen for a tight end. I don't even think it's particularly close. People will point to Kyle Pitts as, the last generational tight end prospect that we saw. With Kyle Pitts, yeah, he was a great prospect because of the athletic upside of him. But in terms of what translates at the NFL level is, production and the fact that he was the number one receiver of his offense all 3 years of college, freshman and sophomore year, starting for a national championship winning team that had Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, George Pickens his freshman season. Like he alphaed all of these dudes as a tight end. Like that is ridiculous. Maybe he's a little bit functional strength wise behind the 8 ball to some tight end prospects that you'll see. Maybe he's a little bit undersized. Maybe
even that I don't see.
The contested catch number, dropped down a little bit this year because he was dealing with a high ankle sprain. But dude, it is so hard to nitpick holes of Brock Bowers. We have a tail of the tape on him. So we broke him down, or I broke him down in depth, and we also broke him down on film in depth. Everything that Kyle Pitts didn't do as far as the little things are concerned, Brock Bowers does at an extremely high level. He understands leverage at the catch point. He understands how to create subtle separation. He understands, how to, have a strong base as a blocker. Like the little things that Kyle Pitts has escaped, Brock Bowers has.
Yeah, and I think the thing you forgot to mention there is the receiving instincts that he has. And we broke it down in the film breakdown, but there was a particular play against Auburn. He is one-handing this catch, like literally palming it with his right hand. Safety's basically coming to clean his clock.
There's two of them, actually, from either side.
Two of them between that. So he's between these two safeties, but more so like the front side safety is coming to clean his clock based off the angle that he's running. He snags the ball, switches hands, and makes a ball carrier move. How many tight ends are so hyper-focused on the catch that maybe they make the catch, maybe they don't, but they're taking a big hit there? The fact that Brock Bowers brings it in and still has the quick processing ability to understand, hey, defender here, got to switch hands, got to make a move. Like that's stuff you can't teach. That is natural football instincts that Brock Bowers has. And you mentioned some issues with his functional strength that people might have. And to be honest, like, I can speak for myself. I'm assuming you agree as well. Like, I didn't see any functional strength issues. Like, yeah, maybe when you're playing like a Dallas Turner or a top edge in the draft, that's one thing. But for the most part, man, he was handling his assignment, other edges in the SEC, climbing up to linebackers when he needed to. Like, he had no issues handling himself as a blocker, specifically at the point of attack. And when you're talking about his translatability as a receiver, like you said, he is the best yak tight end in this class. He is reminiscent of a guy like Sam Laporta, but I really do feel like if he can hit that ceiling potential, he runs a seam even better than Sam Laporta does. I think that upper echelon upside is potentially a George Kittle at the next level. And if you're getting George Kittle at the 10th overall pick, the 12th overall pick, or wherever he goes in the NFL draft, maybe he goes 10th to the New York Jets, man, you're getting a franchise piece for the next 10 plus years.
Yeah, exactly. And from a dynasty perspective, some people don't know what to do with this guy because the tight end position recently has gotten a lot deeper. So Brock Bowers is a little bit less valuable than he would have been 3 years ago when we didn't have all these tight ends that projected pretty well. But like you said, like if Brock Bowers doesn't hit early, to be honest, in his career, I will be maddeningly shocked because this is the most crystal clear projection of a tight end prospect I've ever seen. Athleticism wise, maybe some people have some question marks because he didn't test at the combine. He dealt with a high ankle sprain this year. He was probably dealing with some injuries and didn't want to run a bad time. Bruce Feldman's freaks list had him pegged at like a 4.50 40-yard dash. He jumped like 40 inches coming out of college. Like there's a video of him doing a backflip on, a standstill. Like he's a freakish athlete. Like I literally don't care that he didn't test. I know he would have tested as a 9+ RAS score, no questions asked, potentially even higher than that. So for me with Bowers, again, I understand some of the concerns that people have with him, but to be honest, it feels like prospect fatigue because we've known this guy was going to be a top 10 pick since he took the field his freshman year at 18 years old.
Yeah, and in that season, I mean, if you guys don't remember how good he was as a true freshman in the SEC with that target competition, like we mentioned it, although Stetson Bennett won national championships and he was a solid, college quarterback, it's not like Joe Burrow was throwing him the football. It's not like Caleb Williams was throwing him the football. Like Stetson Bennett is not the caliber of quarterback that should be supporting those types of weapons from a volume standpoint, from a production standpoint. Brock Bowers in that room had 882 receiving yards and 13 receiving touchdowns and led the team in targets as a true freshman tight end. You don't see that.
No, not with George Pickens, Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, and James Cook on the team as well.
Darnell Washington
and Darnell
as well.
Washington and some of the other tight ends that they had on that team.
It's actually remarkable. We probably won't see a tight end prospect like this probably for the next 5 to 10 years. We said that with Kyle Pitts. It's like, who knows if, random Joey from the 2027 class ends up peaking. But from what I know now, man, the Brock Bowers is the best tight end I have ever scouted.
Yeah, absolutely. For me too. Especially when you account for those little things. Like I said, the Georgia toughness, the football IQ, the little things, the catch point fundamentals that he has, they're unteachable, some of them. And it's honestly been the downfall and the crux of Kyle Pitts to this point in his career. He's got the athleticism. He's got all the upside in the world, but he hasn't quite achieved it yet, mainly due to quarterback play and the fact that his offense is terrible. But it's also been partially his fault for not doing the little things right as well. So Brock Bowers, I could talk about him all day, honestly. Just if he falls to you at 107, 108 in a rookie draft, just thank your league mates for being so stupid. Honestly, like, just, I don't care who you have at tight end, unless you have Sam Laporta, you need Brock Bowers. Honestly, like, if you have Trey McBride, if you have George Kittle, if you have one of these guys, try and shop them and just take Bowers, or maybe try and trade down from that pick. But regardless, Brock Bowers should not be on the board any lower than the 107 in any of your rookie drafts.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you need a quarterback, I can understand him going 108 because JJ, like we mentioned earlier, but like, that just kind of goes to show you the depth of this class. Like, this tight end prospect should be where Kyle Pitts was taken back at the 103, the 104 of his draft. But the fact that we're talking about him as the 107, 108 just speaks volumes. Like, if you have a ton of rookie picks this year, just enjoy, because you're getting franchise pillars.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's rattle through the rest of the tight end class, which admittedly is not very good behind Brock Bowers. Ben Sinnott is actually our tight end too. A lot of people maybe expecting Jatavion Sanders from Texas to be our tight end too. I think the thing that gets me excited about Ben Sinnott is the production profile. I think it's weird that nobody's really been talking about him, because when you look at a guy that, had 73 targets this year as a 3-year early declare tight end prospect, he ranked 4th in the NCAA among tight ends with 73 targets, 48 catches, 669 yards, also 4th in the NCAA, and then 6 touchdowns. His athleticism absolutely showed out at the combine too. 9.71 RAS score, 95th percentile agility score, 98th percentile burst, ran a 4.68 at 6'4", 250 pounds. The production profile is there. He's an early declare. He has great athleticism. He's a really good blocker on film as well. Yeah. I think he was a fluid mover in space, and he was very tough. The real concerns that I think people have with Ben Sinnott, I've noticed, is where does this guy get drafted for starters? Is he going to be a 2nd-round pick? Is he going to be a 3rd-round pick? Is he going to slide to day 3? That's concern number 1 with Ben Sinnott. Concern number 2 is, does an NFL team view him more as an H-back or a tight end? Because you can see his number there is number 34. He kind of played a little bit of H-back in college, and I'm hoping that he can play a traditional inline tight end role at the next level, because those guys typically are the ones that produce for fantasy. And he also didn't really play a whole lot of contested catches and downfield type of plays. He was more of a screen merchant, check down guy, short type of target. So I've fallen for guys like this in the past. I was notoriously really high on Hunter Long, who kind of looked like this type of prospect, but Ben Sinnott's a much better athlete, at least.
Yeah, and it's so polarizing, like you said, that this type of prospect, like, it could end up Hunter Long, it could end up Sam Laporta. Like, you never know when you talk about, these yak tight ends with good receiving profiles, specifically when it comes to sharing their offense. And at least Benson Sinnott showed me the ability to command targets that I can't quite say with the rest of the receiving class, bar maybe the guy that we have at number 3 overall, which we'll get into in a second. But when I watched Ben Sinnott, like, I didn't expect to have him as my tight end too. I thought I was going to come in. He's like, oh, it's going to be another tight end name at the tight end position. The guy that we have at 3 is the clear 2. And then it's kind of, 3 to 5 after him. But I plugged in Ben Sinnott, and I was extremely shocked, man. Like, you watch this guy play, like, the numbers speak volumes for it. The film itself, man, we're talking about the yak ability, the athleticism, the underrated blocking. And although there is a risk, like you said, of him potentially playing some H-back snaps, depending if he goes, round 4, round 5, sure. If he goes day 2 in the NFL draft, the NFL team that selects him, I believe, will be playing him at the tight end position, because ultimately that's the best tight end. That's the best position that he has at the next level, in my opinion. So when you're talking about him, like, I think he can be what we saw from Greg Dulcich a couple years ago as a rookie, where he came into that Denver offense, commanded targets, was really a bright spot prior to dealing with injury issues. And the one that you had labeled for him, oddly enough, Greg Dulcich did in his rookie season. Your guy did in his second season. Trey McBride, obviously a big standout on the Dynasty scene, now valued as a top 3 tight end in the market.
Yeah, like, I mean, he does a lot of things really well. I mean, 2.02 yards per route run. That's, third among tight ends in the country. 6.8 yards after catch per reception was eighth among tight ends in the country. We had 81.0 receiving grade, which was ninth. A 70, like I said, 73 targets, good production, 22% targets per route run in 2023. And he was just honestly
Good route runner
underrated.
too.
I just think that's the way that I would describe Ben Sinnott across the board. I think that he's an underratedly good route runner. He was underratedly very good at the after the catch, very good athlete. If he gets day 2 or top 75 draft capital, I'm quite excited about his projection as a guy that I'm going to get in probably the mid to late third round of rookie drafts pretty easily, and potentially even later than that. He's going to be on a lot of my teams because I do believe, especially if you have like a George Kittle or something like that, and you got the 311 in your rookie draft, he's the perfect guy to line your tight end core with to get some upside in the long term. Because as we talked about, Trey McBride and Greg Dulcich, maybe not so much McBride. I think he was more of a second rounder, but I believe Dulcich was available in a lot of the third round rookie drafts that we did back in 2022. And prior to his injury riddled second season, he had gained a lot of value at that point. And I think Sinnott could do the same thing.
Yep. No, completely agree. Ben Sinnott, you guys can correct this in the comment section. But he is the most underrated tight end in this class. And speaking of the next tight end, I alluded to the fact that the industry is probably going to have him as the 2 across the board. I thought he would be the clear 2 coming in before I watched Ben Sinnott. But there's still a lot of positive to take away when it comes to Jatavion Sanders' projection into the next level. And I'll let you take it away with your Longhorn.
Yeah, I really like Jatavion Sanders, the college football player, but I worry about Jatavion Sanders, the NFL tight end, because there's a lot that he does well. He has very strong hands, honestly, potentially even stronger than Bowers at this position. He was automatic at the catch point. You threw it up to him and he was going to come down with it. His athleticism on film was really solid, but he actually didn't test all that well at the NFL Combine. I believe he ran in like 4.69 or something like that. I expected him to run probably even in the 4.5s. I thought he was a more explosive athlete than that. He's 6'4", 245 pounds, so about an average size tight end in terms of that. Production profile is really solid, though. I mean, he's been competing for targets with Xavier Worthy his entire career. He's a redshirt sophomore, just 21 years old, barely on the night of the draft, barely turning 21 just a couple months ago. So the guy's got an interesting profile. He's competed for targets with NFL caliber competition. He was a good yards after the catch player in college. He's very tough, but I worry for him, the mental errors, especially as a blocker, that's going to be hard to get on the field if you can't make the correct reads and make the blocks that you need to make. I think his functional strength is much more of an issue even than Bowers, who we talked about functional strength as an issue with. His route refinement is non-existent, really. The nice thing is that his job as a tight end, getting open, catching the ball, doing something with it, it's there. It's just the question for me is, how much is he going to get on the field early on in his career? Is he going to be the type of guy that takes 2 to 3 years to develop into a starting caliber tight end? If, say, the Miami Dolphins take him in the second round or something, is it going to take him 2 years before he even sees the field because he's not a good enough blocker to stay on the field?
Yeah, that's obviously going to be the biggest question mark. For reference, obviously, Brock Bowers' grade is going to be way higher than everybody. I have him at a 95.5. We just mentioned Benson. Have him at an 82.5. I do see a little bit of a drop off here to JT Sanders. He ranks as a 74.5 when I graded him out. Just really love the translatability of Ben Sinnott comparative to JT Sanders. I think there's a lot he has to learn as a player, but the upside, I mean, we've seen a guy like Jonnu Smith, for example, really burst onto the scene at times. Specifically, I mean, it was funny this year, obviously working behind Kyle Pitts, having arguably better production at times than Kyle Pitts, but Jonnu Smith, like, especially when he was on the Titans, we hyped him up a couple years ago, top 10 level tight end at spurts in his career. I can see JT Sanders being in that mold, but in my opinion, he could be more productive because he's shown the ability to be more productive at the collegiate level. But that's the type of mold you're talking about. Athletic tight end is probably going to be an ancillary piece to an offense, but one that has shown the ability to contribute when his name is called.
Yeah, he's really difficult because I look at JT Sanders, even though he didn't test this well, I view him the same way of like a Jonnu Smith or a Noah Fant, OJ Howard, these types of guys that were like great athletes coming out. They had pretty good film, pretty good production, but then they never put it all together mentally. And that's the thing I worry about with Jatavion Sanders, because the tight end position is very complex. Sam Laporta, some of these guys that have put it together mentally, they're definitely smart players. And I think Bowers is a very smart player. I think Sinnott's probably a little bit further along than JT Sanders. I personally think that JT Sanders should have went back to school. As a Texas fan, again. Would have loved to have him back. And also, too, I think he needed another year of development to figure out some of those blocking mishaps that we saw this year, to figure out some more route running nuance and things of that nature. So for me, I'm surprised that he actually came out for the NFL draft. I really thought he was going to come back to school, but I still think a team's going to take a shot on him at, 55 overall or 65 overall. Like, he's going to probably be a top 75, top 100 pick at the worst case scenario. And at that point, again, third round of my rookie draft, I'll take a shot on him. But if he's a late second or an early third rounder, I'm probably going to be out, especially if he goes to like the Dolphins or the Bengals. I could see him going pretty high in rookie drafts and a lot of people just chasing the upside. But again, there's good about his profile. He was competing with legit NFL dudes his whole career, and he struggled quarterback play-wise just as much as Xavier Worthy and just as much as Adonai Mitchell did this year. So the fact that he was very productive, like he was 21% year two dominator rating as a true, redshirt freshman in 2022 is really impressive with Xavier Worthy on the same field.
Yeah, for sure. When you're talking about potentially where he could go in rookie drafts, I feel like the market is going to have him above Ben Sinnott. So I personally, assuming that's the case, will let my league mates draft him, because there's just really no scenario, assuming they get relatively equal draft capital, assuming both go day 2 or assuming both go round 4, hypothetically, where I would ever take JT Sanders over Ben Sinnott personally.
Yeah, it's really all going to depend on where the market views him, because I think the market is down on him. Had he tested better, I think the market would be a lot more excited about him, but I expect him to go early in the third round, probably of rookie drafts, and Sinnott being available maybe late in the third round or even in the fourth round will probably have me not select JT Sanders very often, go wide receiver, go running back in the spots where he's actually going in terms of his market value. So let's flip on over to our tight end 4 and 5. We can kind of rapid fire these. Let's start with my tight end 4, which is Jaheim Bell, Florida State tight end. Very much kind of like also like Ben Sinnott, more of like an H-back, exciting. Yeah. Gerald Everett, Brevin Jordan are the two comparisons that we drew to this guy. He's got great yards after catch ability. He's a really good athlete. He tested an 8.43 RAS score. Production profile is pretty solid. He was really productive this year with a lot of NFL caliber competition with Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and Trey Benson on that team. He was productive at South Carolina as well. Prior to that, 6'2", 241 pounds is a wonky size profile for a tight end, but he's got versatility. He's got explosive playability. The real question I have with Jaheim Bell is, A, where does he get drafted? Again, I want to know where his draft capital is expected to be. If he's a 4th or a 5th round tight end, probably not going to be too interested in him. But if he goes in the 2nd round, he becomes more interesting. He had a limited route tree, really blocking technique all over the place. Functional strength is a problem, and his football IQ for a almost 23-year-old tight end was a little bit concerning to me. So again, a dart throw tight end is what is the way I look at Jaheim Bell. If he's there in the 4th round, I'll take shots on him if I need tight ends on my roster.
Yeah, he's like pretty much like what we just said about JT Sanders. He's kind of like a worse version in that sense, where he's less productive. He's about, like, technically speaking, from an RAS standpoint, he's comparably athletic, but I thought JT Sanders played faster on tape comparatively. And when it comes to Jaheim Bell, like you said, a lot of the intangible aspects of playing the tight end position aren't quite there. But what you do like is his innate ability, that instincts as a runner in open space, a la a Brevin Jordan, a la a Gerald Everett. And we've seen those guys be productive, man. We saw Gerald Everett, for example, have some flashes on the Chargers of most recent. Brevin Jordan, I believe he had that big playoff touchdown in that wild card game too. Like, these type of tight ends show spurts, but the problem is, of course, like you said, if they can't figure it out mentally, they don't get the starting reps, they don't get the consistent reps to be consistent producers, but on a play in, play out basis, have the ability to make a play in open space.
Yeah, I think it's really an underrated thing with the tight end position, knowing that you have to both be the most athletic, the smartest, and the most pro-ready tight end on your team, because just like the running back position, it is very opportunity-based. You don't get 3 tight ends on the field like you would at wide receiver, where all you have to be is a top 3 wide receiver on your team, and you're going to get the snaps, you're going to get the reps. With the tight end position, if you're a role player, which I believe Jaheim Bell will be at the next level, most likely, unless he really hits his ceiling out of the water, he's probably only going to play 40, 50% of his team snaps. And that's not a tight end that's really valuable outside of dynasty best ball leagues or regular best ball leagues. So for me, Jaheim Bell, 4th round, priority free agent, depending on where he goes in the NFL draft. If he's a 3rd round tight end to the Bengals or something and he's available in the 4th round, I'll take shots there. But for the most part, I'm probably not that interested. I think the wide receiver class is deep enough that I'll probably favor those guys. I think the running back class has some gems later on in the draft that I'll probably be targeting as well. The last tight end that we're going to talk about in this video here is one of the best tight ends, I believe, in the history of the combine in terms of athleticism here. Theo Johnson, tight end from Penn State. I wrote in his fantasy outlook, look, I have no idea how this guy tested as the best athlete in the history of the combine or one of the best athletes in the history of the combine, because to me, I saw a pretty average athlete on film. 6'6", 259 pounds, big burling presence on film in terms of a size score, in terms of his size profile. 4.57 40-yard dash, 97th percentile weight adjusted speed score, 95th percentile burst score, 77th percentile agility. For me, I saw a very physical player. He was a good route runner as a result. Great athleticism testing wise, good red zone threat, yards after catch contributor. I think he can do a little bit there. And he had a good seam buster kind of straight line speed. But the errors that I saw were, again, very similar to Jaheim Bell and Jatavion Sanders. A lot of mental errors for a 23-year-old player. That's really concerning. Blocking technique was way off. His game speed didn't match his testing speed. His production profile is horrible, to be honest. And the drops were an issue for him. So when I look at a guy that had 7 touchdowns this year in a pretty solid season as like a 50-year senior and pretty much did nothing prior to that in his college career, I get a little bit concerned, especially when you factor in that at his size, he should be a better blocker. At his size and his experience level, he should be a smarter, more instinctive player. And I didn't see that. So to me, Theo Johnson is going to be a guy that my league mates chase because he was a really athletic tight end, and I'm just going to let them draft him.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think his cost is going to be that much. Unless he goes on day 2 and is a back of the 3rd round rookie draft pick, sure. But for the most part, I feel like he's going to be a 4th rounder in a lot of rooms that people take throws on. So I'm willing to get him at that cost. I do prefer him slightly to Jaheim Bell, 69.0 grade versus 67.0. So depending on landing spot, I can be convinced either way, to be honest. The thing that really shocked me, like you said, I saw straight line speed. I thought, like you said, he could be a seam buster. I think the vertical speed that he brings to the table was very strong, obviously. Hence why I graded him as a 15 there. The thing that shocked me for the most part is the 77th percentile agility score. I didn't see that type of, agile, side to side type of athlete. I saw more of a vertical athlete, but kind of goes to show you just maybe how much Penn State was misusing him. And that's kind of been a common theme for Penn State, having the freakiest athletes in the world, apparently, and just never getting the most out of them. Like we've seen, Micah Parsons, we saw Odafe Owe. Obviously, this year you got Chop Robinson, Adika Isaac. Why is Penn State just filled with elite 9.98, 10.0 RAS athletes every year? I don't know. But when you're talking about Theo Johnson specifically, the way I kind of see him is kind of like how Luke Musgrave won this year, whereas a seam tight end can give you some big splash plays, can score the odd touchdown, but I don't think can be an integral target getter in your offense. He's more so a guy where if I have a set receiver core and I just need a tight end that can scare defenses back, that's the type of role I would envision for him in the next level. And to be honest, that's the type of role I'd be taking in round 4 or round 5 rather than round 2 or round 3 of the NFL draft if I'm a team.
Yeah, and not to mention from a rookie draft standpoint, the tight end class is bad, and I think the market knows that. So realistically, what's going to be the difference in draft capital you have to spend on Ben Sinnott or Jatavion Sanders versus Theo Johnson and Jaheim Bell? To me, they might all end up being 4th round rookie picks, to be honest. And maybe one of them sneaks into round 3. For the most part, I would, if I'm going to take a shot on this tight end class, it's going to be Bowers for starters. But if it's not Bowers, it's going to be Sinnott or it's going to be JT Sanders in the mid 3rd to early 4th round. To me, I would rather this receiver class is deep enough that you're going to get half decent receivers in the 4th round of rookie drafts. You're going to get half decent, maybe running backs if they slide an Isaiah Davis type, a Kamani Vidal type. We're going to talk about in that tomorrow's video. And maybe even too, you get a Spencer Rattler with day 2 draft capital that you can take a shot on in the 4th round. There's a lot of great players in this class. And to me, Theo Johnson and Jaheim Bell are just the 50th best player in this class. So priority free agents, late 4th round, if you need a tight end, by all means, especially in Dynasty best ball formats, I'm more interested. But for me in a regular managed league, especially if it's a shallow league, like a start 8 or a start 9, I'm not really that interested.
I'll fight back on the Ben Sinnott because I do think if he goes top 50 in the NFL draft, to a Carolina, to a Cincinnati, and the market dictates he's a back-end second, I personally would be willing to pick.
I highly doubt he will ever go that high, regardless of where he goes in the draft.
If his market raised that high is what I'm saying, I would be willing to take him that high.
Yeah, I just think given the strength of the wide receiver and the top of the running back class probably coming around off the board around the 2nd round, I actually think that even if Ben Sinnott, say, went 65 overall to the Panthers or something like that, I still think he would be a mid to late 3rd rounder.
Maybe. Who knows? But regardless, I know I'm going to be ahead of the market.
Yeah, me too. And I'll probably take some shares at that point. But regardless, this tight end class, not overly exciting. So we are going to close this video out. Again, appreciate you guys for joining us. We did talk about all the quarterbacks, all the tight ends in this class. Tomorrow, we will be talking about our top 15 running backs in a similar format to the way we did it with the wide receiver position. It's an interesting class, not a very good running back class, but there's going to be guys that emerge, whether just as handcuffs or maybe they even become league winners potentially.
We got
There's going to be guys
takes
in this running back class that could emerge, and we are going to talk about them in tomorrow's video. So definitely stay tuned for that. Make sure you leave a like on this video. Check out the wide receiver video we did yesterday. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. On Thursday, Wednesday night, we'll have a final mock draft ahead of the NFL draft. And of course, we will be live Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the NFL draft itself. Going to be reacting, breaking down rankings, debates, and all that kind of stuff. Going to be a ton of fun. Get some drinks and come and join us. We will have a lot of fun on Thursday night. So with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.